All right. Just so that you know, today's lesson is where it becomes more difficult, and I refuse to teach if you're talking. And the assessment will still be when it's going to be. So, you've got to make sure that you're paying attention. We'll talk about it. But I'm not moving it back further from the date that it's going to be. I don't know if it will be tomorrow. It might be on Tuesday. But I'm not changing it. And that's not necessarily the greatest thing either, because what happens on Monday, you're not here. So it's not like you have a day of review that happens right before. So you really have to make sure you have an understanding of it. And it's not just I'm memorizing something for that moment to be able to take the test. You have to be able to truly understand it. That way you can take the test. All right. So take a look at this. The first thing it asks me is my A value. How do I figure out what my A value is going to be? Ayana, how do I figure out my A value? I look at the graph. I like that. What are you doing when you look at the graph? Perfect. You try to find the points. All right, so I see a point here. Do you agree with that? And then where do you see your next point, Ayana? 1, 0, and then also 3, 0, right? And do you see another point anywhere? Yep. Where do you see another point? -3, or 0, -3. Is that what you mean? 0, -3, not -3, because -3, 0 would be -3, 0, right? So -0, -3, and where else? 4, -3. All right, so you look for the dots, and then you look, why do you point out the dots? Why is that important? So that you can then do what? To find the A, H, and K. How do you find your A value? What did you do? Yep. Keep going. You're right. Keep going. I love what you're saying. So you got, what did you get for A? You got -1 because, say that one more time because I don't think everybody heard you. Why you got -1? Why do you say -1? Because what happened with your pattern? Very good. It's going neck down. And what is the pattern? Say that again. 1, 3, and then eventually it would go down 5, down 7. So I know that my A value is going to be -1 because it went from 1357 to -1357. All right, what's my H value, Tomo? And how did you find it? I agree. How did you find it? Say that completely so everybody can hear what you said, because that everything that you said was important, not just one part of it. What did you say? Okay. Okay, so you looked at for the, but what vocabulary word do you need to use? That's important here. The vertex. You look for the X value of the vertex. What's my K value, Gabriel? 1. I agree. Why do you say 1? Very good. He says he looked at the vertex Y value and it's 1. What is my vertex? What is my vertex? Nora. Say that again. 2, 1. I notice a lot of people write it like this. You're going to start noticing that I'm going to take off points. Ordered pairs should be in parentheses. What's the equation, Chris? Shh. Thank you. Who told you that? Shh. Shh. Daniel. Okay, -1 then. Yep. Yep. I agree. Like that? Where am I having my squared? Yes. Another point, another place people lose points, not having that squared. That takes it, if you don't have this squared, it makes it a linear function, not a quadratic function. All right, yes. Yes, you do not have to have the 1 there. You could just have the negative sign. That's how you'll typically see it written. Andrew, what's my domain here? Okay. What's my domain here? What's my domain here? And then I want to talk about why, Andrew, because you got this right on your exit card, right? And so I want to know that you understand what it is and not just that you're memorizing or guessing. Yes. What do you say, Matthew? Very good. Okay. So my domain for all quadratic functions, all parabolas, the domain is talking about the x values. If I were to make a table of all of the x values that this thing is going to cover, will I have an x value at -1? Will the graph cross -1? Will the graph cross -2? Yes or no? Why do you say yes? Why do some people say no? Yes, because there's arrows at the end. It continues, it comes from an infinite place. So will it eventually cross every x value? Yes. Every single x value on both sides. But when I'm talking about my range, is it going to hit every y value? No. So what's my range limited to? When I'm looking at my range, and Angelina, what will my range be? Very good. From -infinity to 1, what's the other way that I can write this? What's the other way? Marcus isn't here. What's the other way, Michaela, I can write this? Uh-huh. Very good. Y is less than or equal to 1. And the reason why is because this point a maximum, my vertex? Is this a maximum or a minimum, Edmund? Is that a maximum or a minimum? It's a maximum. So all of my values, are they greater than this or less than this? They're below, which is less than. So that's where Michaela's equation came from. Stephen, what's my line of symmetry? X equals 2. Where do people get points they can offer that, everybody? They forget the x equals. All right. Alex C, what are my... Ooh, this is a good one. What are my x-intercepts? My x-intercepts. Be careful. My x-intercepts. Which one's my x-axis? My horizontal or my vertical? Okay, where does my graph cross my horizontal x-axis? 1 and 3. My x-intercepts are 1 and 3. That's all we're looking for, where it crosses the x-axis. All right, what are the y-intercepts? First of all, are there more than one y-intercept? Is there more than one? No, there's just one. Jackie R is not here. Oh, I forgot to write her. I spoke to Matthew. Alex D. -3. Very good. Fantastic. All right. That's from yesterday. All right, let's take a look at your homework. All right, I'm going to call on you guys for this. Trey can't help us. Well, do you remember it? Okay. What was the equation for the first one? What did you end up getting for the first one? Huh? This is not page 17?
Wait, no, that isn't. It says -3 too. On page 17 it says -3. That's the page.
Okay. I need you to be on the same page as me. The very first part is the review, and I need you to be on the same page as me. We'll talk about that. All right. Who was I talking to? Trey. X, then? You say -0. I don't necessarily agree with that. Here's my vertex. What's my x value of my... Oh, vertex. Okay, so you wrote -0. That's fine. And then? Uh-huh. And then? -7. You could also have written this as g of x equals just x squared minus 7. When you go to graph this, you start off at -7, which is here. It goes up 1, up 3, up 5, and up 7. Which way did it move? It just went down 7. What part of the equation shows this move? Your h value of 0 and your k value of 7. Next, Sahara. She's not. I just called on you. What's my vertex here? -1, 0 is my vertex. Okay. And my pattern is going up 1, up 3, up 5. All right. So what's your A value? 1. What's your H value? And what's your K value? What's my equation? And then, do I need to write +0? Absolutely not. All right, so when you go to graph this, you go to graph -1, 0, which is there. It goes up 1, up 3. Oops. And that would be it. Which way did it move? 1 to the left. What part of the equation shows that? Your h value of -1 and k value of 0. All right. And what ways did this graph move? What's my vertex, Davis? What's my vertex? And then I'll come to your question. What's your vertex here? Three, 0? I don't see 3, 0 in the table. How do I see a vertex in my table? Someone tell him how to look for it. Don't tell him what it is. He says 2, 1. I don't agree with that. Tell him how to look for it, Eleni. Listen closely, Davis, and I'll come back to you. Huh? How do I find, you told us that yesterday, how do I find where my vertex is? Where they mirror. Where do you see this start to mirror? Where do you see 2 values on each side of a number? So where do you see your your y values start to repeat? Do you see repeating y values here? Okay, you see 3 and 3. What else? And then you see 6 and 6. So what's my vertex then? You're saying it backwards. 1, 2. You guys are so impatient. You know how many times all of you don't know something or take time to learn something? And then when it's somebody else, you're like, seriously? Nobody in this class has 100%, and nobody does well on everything. All right, so what I need you to do, Davis, is you told us this value. Let's look at the pattern. When I look to the right of my vertex, what's going on? You always want to look to the right of the vertex to see if it's going up each side, because remember, this is either going to be the top or the bottom. It's going up, and then up, and then up. It's going up how many here? 1, then 3. Okay, so what's my A value? One. And then what's your H value? 1. What's your K value? All right, what's our equation then? G of x equals? Yep. All right. I go to look at this graph. I go to 1, 2. It goes up 1, up 3, and it would go up 5 if I could, but I can't. Mine looks like a V. It should not. What ways did it move? It moved. No, I don't agree with that. It moved to the right. 1, up 2. And what shows that? The H value of 1 and the K value of 2. Not hard to do, not difficult. All right. I am. All right, this is what I'd like you to do. On the next page, I would like you to, in your groups, Alex, find someone to work with. I don't care what group. I would like you to do number 1, listen closely, numbers 1, 2, and 3. But I need you to leave the increasing interval and decreasing interval. Leave those, and then we'll discuss them. I'm going to give you, this should not take you more than maybe 10 minutes. This is page 18. Page 18. All right. You may begin. You need to work in a group. Work in a group, Sahara. Find someone to work with. All right, Edmund, how'd you do the table first? What'd you do? Perfect. Oh, perfect. So you plugged in 0 here, and then you started plugging in the table, right? If you do the table first, I like doing the vertex and putting the vertex in the middle. So that's a lot of people do that, and then fill in 1, 2, negative 1, 2, and then figure out what the other values will be. All right. So we're done with that. Line of symmetry. Everyone, what's my line of symmetry? I agree. X equals 0. What's my vertex, everyone? 0, 3. Is my vertex a maximum or a minimum? It's a maximum. Does everyone understand why that's a maximum? Are you sure? Okay. All right. What's my domain going to be? All real numbers. I use the symbol, this symbol. You can also do it the other way. Negative infinity to positive infinity. All right. My range. Again, do I have a maximum or a minimum? I have a maximum. So are all of my y values greater than or less than that? Less than. So my y values are less than or equal to my maximum, which was 3. If you wrote it the other way, you've written that it goes from negative infinity to positive 3. You always do them in least to greatest. Yes. Yeah, that's what. Oh, write it out? Yeah, you could do either one of these, this or that. This or that, either one. Okay, let's now talk about increasing and decreasing intervals. There are 2 ways you can see it. I need everyone's attention. This is very important. I need everyone's attention. If I'm looking at the graph, and I need this. So if I'm looking at the graph, I need my axis of symmetry to figure out my increasing and decreasing interval. My question is, how do we read a graph? How do we read a graph? Left to right, like a book. We read it this direction, right? So when I'm looking at this, I read it from left, right, to right. What do you notice about my graph? Where is it increasing? And when we're talking about intervals, we're talking about intervals of x. That's super important. So if I were a good note taker and I want to make sure I get this right, I would write down that these intervals, they're talking about between what x values. So my intervals are always talking about x values. What are my x values? What are my x values? Between what x values is this thing increasing? Where do you see it increasing? Yes, sir? David? So you say from negative 3 to 0. I agree with that on this graph. But the one thing that I want to say is that this graph goes on forever and ever. So I love the fact that you know that it goes from at least negative 3 to 0. Very good. So this graph is increasing from a negative place, negative infinity, until it hits my axis of symmetry, which is 0. So this is increasing from negative infinity until you get to 0. It's increasing from negative infinity until it gets to your axis of symmetry. You can think of your axis of symmetry like a wall. It's increasing until it gets there, and then what's going to happen? And then what's happening? And then it's decreasing. So what's my decreasing interval going to then be? What's my decreasing interval then going to be? I'll come to your question in a second, Alex. 1 second, I'll wait for everyone to finish talking. It's going to be decreasing from 0 to a positive infinite place, because this is going to continue to go down and down and down into where it covers every, remember our domain is all real numbers. So where it's increasing and decreasing has to include an infinite place. So it's going to go from 0 to positive infinity. That's where it's decreasing. All right, Alex, your question. And then Stephen. You're looking at the y value. Are you, the fact that you're looking at the y value, you're saying that you don't agree with the fact that you're looking at the y value? Okay, so the very first thing that I said, remember when I said if you're a good note taker, because that part was very important. When I'm talking about increasing and decreasing, I'm not talking about where it goes to its y. I'm talking about where it increases on its x. So you can think about this, these numbers here, this x-axis is like time, right? If I were to label this axis time, and I said, hey, where's this graph increasing? You'll say it increases from, let's say it stopped here. Let's say it stopped here for real, but it doesn't. Oh, it's increasing from -3 until it gets to 0. That's when it stops increasing. So we look at intervals of increase and decrease we look at the x-axis. I'm saying that it is increasing from an infinite place until it gets to 0. Then from 0 to an infinite place, it's decreasing. So we look at intervals of increasing and decreasing. So make a note for yourself. That's going to be important for you. Okay. The assessment, we are pushing that back to Tuesday. Your homework tonight is page 20. Please do it. You may leave. If you're staying for the retake, you can stay today or tomorrow, either day. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second.